Broadcasting live from the offices of policebackground.net. This is the Police Applicant Podcast with your host, Ken Roybal.
Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Police Applicant Podcast. This is episode 131. And we are very excited about this episode. But first, before we get started, Donovan all the way here from Vegas.
Yep. I am all the way from Vegas. It's nice and warm here.
I always find it funny how you say Vegas like that.
What?
Is that the Wisconsin way of saying it?
It probably is the Wisconsin way to say it, yes.
And before we get started, I want to thank our special guest, Mike Margolis, LAPD retired, is here. Mike, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We, I don't have any announcements. Donovan, do you have any announcements about book sales or new happenings in the...
book sales are still going, and I just was notified that next week I'll be making an appearance on Trooper Talk for the Nevada State Police, talking about polygraphs.
Trooper Talk.
My favorite thing to talk about. You know that, Ken.
I did polygraphs. I did not know that that they had it's a podcast. Yeah.
I'm happy to say I didn't know that either until I came and asked me today.
That's pretty cool. Well, we'll have to have Trooper Talk on the podcast. We should do that.
Yeah, we'll get something set up.
Well, today, this has been something I talked to Donovan about this episode a long time ago, and I just had to get the right person for it. I was kind of putting interest things out there to folks that I knew, and finally got a friend who knew Mike. And the reason that this is so important is something that that has been on my radar for a long time, since probably the last 2 years. And the title of this episode is Police Culture, the Dangers of Alcohol and Substance Abuse. And to preface this, I talked to Mike about this. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. In 1980, I was sitting in an academy classroom at Elysian Park, and this sergeant stands at the front of the class, and he says, "My name is Jack DeCoop Crank, and I'm an alcoholic." In 1980, bunch of fresh-faced academy recruits. We graduated. We did our probation, went out and did patrol, blah, 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 and didn't listen to a word Jack said. And Mike, Mike and Donovan know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Because I
knew Jack, so.
Did you?
Yeah.
Looking back on it, what a great class. And this episode is not, I have some articles and things. It's not an LAPD specific class, but it's something that, a podcast, but I know LAPD and I know they've been in the news and things. So we're going to bring that stuff up. But Donovan and Mike, this is a problem. Donovan did police work in Wisconsin and Washington State. And Mike, you obviously were in LA. I was in LA. And this flirtatious romance between police officers and alcohol is terrible.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree 100%.
And so we want to talk about that. All right. So what we want to do is we want to talk about Mike, introduce you, Mike, to the audience, and tell us about you, how you grew up, how you got into police work, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I'm originally from Massachusetts. I grew up small town 20 miles west of Boston, and grew up in a middle-class family, played a lot of sports growing up. Alcohol was a big part of our family, and alcoholism runs in our family, unfortunately. And I dabbled in alcohol as a young teenager. My parents used to have a lot of parties. They used to entertain a lot. And I was tasked with cleaning up after the parties, doing dishes, helping out my parents as part of my allowance. And I remember as a young kid, testing the drinks when people left. They would leave a half a drink, whatever. I'd sip it. I was curious whether it was a mixed cocktail, an old fashioned, or a beer. I'd sip it. And this is my earliest memory of consumption of alcohol. As I got older, I got more involved with alcohol with my friends. I played ice hockey for most of my life, starting at age 8, organized ice hockey. And I remember going out after games and we'd get somebody to buy us a case of beer or whatever. And 15, 16, 17 years old, drinking a lot of beer and getting drunk. And so that's how it started, I think. It started with, beer, and it started with weekend partying and stuff like that. So then fast forward, I graduated high school and I went to college in a small business school in Western Massachusetts called American International College. And I started out as a business major, and I subsequently switched to criminal justice. And I found that, you know what? I really liked criminal justice. I thought it was interesting. I also took sociology. So I graduated from a 4-year college with a criminal justice degree with a minor in sociology. And I did really well. I did horrible in the business school, and I had to switch my major at the beginning to criminal justice. But it was a godsend because I ate it up. I thought it was cool, and I realized by going through the school of criminal justice that I can make a living after I graduate in some aspect of criminal justice. So getting back to college, the drinking, the partying, it escalated. And I'll explain later on in the podcast, but when I did a biopsy in my life after I got sober, I realized that I was an alcoholic. I displayed the objective symptoms of alcoholism back when I was in college. And I didn't know it. I had no clue. But absolutely, I was in the early stages of alcoholism, 20, 21, 22 years old. So I graduated in 1987, and I immediately was hired as a private investigator. And I worked in downtown Boston for a small firm. And I did that job for 3.5 years. And I was really successful working undercover. And I was involved with some sting operations, narcotic operations with the Massachusetts State Police Undercover Narcotics Unit. I did a case or two up in New York. I worked with the New York State Police Undercover Unit. So basically, I got interested in the public sector of law enforcement rather than the private sector. And with the encouragement of these undercover dope cops that I worked with, I decided that I would pursue law enforcement in terms of becoming a police officer, hopefully in New England. So I started my quest of applying to different agencies around New England to no avail. Back then, there was a lot of nepotism going on, and it was very difficult to land a decent police job in New England. I tried for about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, I can't remember. And then finally somebody said to me, hey, the Los Angeles Police Department hires, and they also do an out-of-state testing program. And what that is they'll send you everything in the mail, you fill it out, you fly out for about 3 days, you test, and if you pass everything, then you go home and you wait. And it's somewhat more accelerated at that pace than it would be off the street in Los Angeles, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I guess they gave a break to out-of-state applicants. They sped up the testing process. So it was the fall of 1990. I think it was October. I moved out to California, and I had not been hired at that point. I was very close. I passed all the tests. I did really good on the oral. I knocked it out of the park. And I moved out to California. I was here, I'm not there now, but when I was in California. I was there for about 3 weeks, and I got notified that I had Academy Day. So that was cool. So I only spent about 3 weeks in California before I knew I was being hired by the Los Angeles Police Department. So I joined the LAPD in December 3rd, 1990. And I did really good in the police academy. I scored very high on all the assets of the police academy: shooting, physical fitness, everything. I was a road guard, and Ken knows what that is.
Mm-hmm.
I was still athletic back then, but the caveat to that was on the weekends, after I got my homework done and got my gear ready, we went out drinking. And I would get intoxicated. And this went on during the course of the 6-month academy. And people have asked me over the years, well, how did that shape your early career? How were you able to get through the academy? You know, with an alcohol problem, as you say you had. I'll tell you, it was more binge drinking at that point in time. I was very young. I was very athletic. So I would be able to recover really quickly. That's how I got through it. And so I graduated. Excuse me. I started my rookie year in Newton Division, which is South LA, as you know, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it. I absolutely loved the job. I would have done it for free. On the weekends, I couldn't wait to get back to work because I just ate it up. I just couldn't believe I was doing this job and they were paying me, and I'm learning quickly, and I'm doing all the stuff that you do as a South End copper, and just loving it. I made a fatal mistake. I went out drinking one early morning, and I got in some trouble. This is in 1992, the beginning of 1992, and it cost me a 22-day suspension way back then. And I don't need to go into the complaint, but I'm here to tell you that that 22-day suspension that I took in 1992 was a direct result of consuming alcohol and getting intoxicated. Mm-hmm. So what I'm telling you guys is that back in 1992, I was already struggling with the alcohol issue, and I had no clue that I was an alcoholic. Just to jump forward for a bit, and I'll get into some other stuff, but I got sober May 5th, 2001. So you can see back in 1992 to what was going on, what was the beginnings of my drinking career, so to speak, as it related to my law enforcement career. Already having major problems, suspensions, and I was a brand new cop. So,
and
you were questions?
You were an alcoholic before you came on the job.
Yes.
And how old were you
when I joined the LAPD?
Yeah.
26 years old.
So did you know at 26 years old, you're applying to be a police officer, did you know that you had an alcohol problem, or did you just blow it off?
Nope. I had no clue. I knew that I liked to party, and I knew I liked to drink, but I was clueless as to what was going on with me in terms of the alcohol issue. Had no idea.
And Donovan, this falls in line with most of the stuff that I knew when you get out of the academy at a very young age. I remember getting off probation, and what we did was I must have been working morning watch or something, which is graveyard. And the following morning, went and got a case of beer, and all the training officers and everybody was on the rooftop of the old Sears building. We were drinking, and that was the thing. Was it the same in the departments that you were with, where there was just drinking was part of the culture?
It was. I mean, departments I was at, working the afternoon shift or graveyard shift. Once you were done, someone was getting together somewhere, either in the parking lot. We were meeting at someone's house or something for for drinks after shift. That was just common practice.
And
You know, it was scary.
Mike, yeah. I mean, we didn't know it back then. We were young. I was 22 when I started.
Yep.
Mike, is this baked in to the police culture?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I was going through probation, yeah, I got sucked into it, and I think it was a trust issue. If you're asked to go out drinking and you turn that down, I think they would look at you like, well, why not? What? You're too good to go out drinking with us? We're not asking you to get drunk. Just come on out and have a cold beer. We, chop it up with the guys. But knowing me, I went out and I got intoxicated. I could drink a lot back then. I could hold a lot of alcohol, so that I was able to hang with the boys early on, and so I fit right in like a glove back then when it came to the drinking issue.
There is an article that I wanted to bring up. It's from a website called Alcohol Help. I don't know if you're familiar with it. This is some stats on alcoholism and where is it? Don't let me. So it's estimated that over 33% of police binge drank in the last month, whatever, when this article is, and the largest age of binge drinkers is 25, 35. The average age of male police officers is 39. The average age of female police officers is 38. Most law enforcement agencies require 21 to join, and a lot of this drinking has to do with in the ages that you are at the time, usually in the 30s, where this starts coming to light and everything. And surprisingly, women are not too far from men when it comes to this drinking issue. So it's not just a male issue.
Absolutely. Unfortunately for women, what I learned later on, women suffer more than men in terms of the alcoholism. It's the biology of the female. I don't know if it's hormones or exactly what. It's the chemistry of a female body. They tend to absorb more alcohol when they consume it than a male. So what that means is they could drink 6 beers and the guy next to him or her can drink the same amount of liquor, and she may be more intoxicated because her body absorbed more of the alcohol. And over time, they'll do more internal damage to themselves, not knowingly. That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. And this article also goes on to say substance disorders are estimated to be between 20 and 30% among police, compared to under 10% among the general population, with 1 in 4 police officers struggling with alcohol or drug abuse. 1 in 4. Alcoholism, according to a 2010 study by the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, 16% of female officers and 11% of male officers showed at-risk alcohol use. 16% versus 11%.
Right.
Oh, I think that's accurate. Absolutely. It's the culture. And when you said substance abuse, you're talking narcotics. Obviously, if you're a police officer and you're caught using illicit narcotics, you'd be terminated right away. What I saw when I was on the job and working our behavioral science services unit later on in my career, a lot of employees get hooked on prescription medication. It's not uncommon, let's put it that way. And how does that start? Well, they have an on-duty injury, maybe have a surgery, get prescribed hydrocodone or some type of pain medication, narcotic, and they abuse it. And then it becomes habit forming, and it creates a plethora of issues. I've seen it. I've counseled officers, male and female, that have problems with prescription medication.
Well, and I think one thing that we see is those that get into law enforcement, there's a high number of people that get in that have suffered some sort of childhood trauma, and they bring that into the job. And that just adds more to not just what's going on for them in the job, but they're bringing that extra baggage along with them. And I think that brings up some of those tendencies as well, like, growing up in a house that, your parents are alcoholics and you see that and you mimic that. And
Mm-hmm.
you see a lot of that. So, I mean, it's crazy what we do to ourselves in this profession when we know what we're doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think so. I grew up in an alcoholic family. My mother was an alcoholic. My father, my older brother, my older sister were teetotalers. It was my mother that was an alcoholic. But I don't recall like a lot of trauma.
Right.
I just recalled a lot of. I was a latchkey kid. First of all, my mom worked, my dad worked, so I had a lot of free time, and I experimented with alcohol at an early age, and I got hooked on it. And I had a really good childhood growing up. I don't
Hmm.
remember too many traumatic events. There was some issues later on with my mom and my father related to alcoholism, but basically I had a really good childhood.
Right.
I didn't need for anything. I just like to party. I like to drink alcohol with my friends as I got older, and that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. When I was growing, I grew up in an alcoholic family as well. And Donovan, I don't know if you have this story about when you were a young cop or anything, but my father, my uncle, my uncles, my sister, were all alcoholics, and it felt like it was in the blood. And so when I became older, I started drinking. I was about 16, 17 years old. Used to chug down beers, Annie Green Springs wine, Boone's Farm wine, and all this kind of stuff. And I would drink to get drunk as a teenager. I tried so hard to follow the family line and become an alcoholic, but God said no. Even as hard as I tried to be an alcoholic, it just didn't happen. So when I had kids, I was in my mid 20s or something like that, and I said I can't do this anymore. But I just couldn't keep drinking just to get drunk. A lot of people are surprised when Ken, you used to drink like that. And I go, yeah, I used to drink like that. But the thing for me is I didn't drink because it was fun. The sole purpose of me drinking was to get drunk.
Hmm.
And Donovan, I don't know if you, growing up, had any problems like that.
Well, growing up in Wisconsin, I mean, drinking is just, I mean, that's what you do. I mean, Sunday at church, after church, everyone goes over to the pastor's house to get drunk. And I mean, and people are, it blew my mind that kids couldn't be in bars when I moved outside of Wisconsin, because I remember at, 3, 4 years old sitting at the bar. Now I had a Shirley Temple, but I'm watching all my relatives around me getting drunk. And you see that all the time where, once I mean, I did my drinking in high school. I did a little bit in college, but I just saw everyone acting stupid, and drunks just irritated me so much. I'm like, I just don't want to, I don't want to get involved in that.
Yeah.
I found other things I got addicted to that, aren't the best for you, but I was able to stay away from the alcohol, thankfully.
Yeah, I remember my parents were divorced when I was, I think, 3 or something like that. But I remember when my dad had us,
Mhm.
I remember sitting in a bar in the back of the bar on some Saturday, Sunday morning. And the three of us, me, my brother, and my sister, were doing whatever we were doing. We didn't have internet or anything, so we must have been playing whatever, just goofing off there. But we would sit there in the back in the corner of the bar and just wait for my dad to get done drinking. And then we would go do whatever. So it was very much growing up for me. I didn't think twice about it. So when I became a police officer, Mike, it just kind of moved into another phase of my life. But it was even on supercharged because now I'm a
Right.
cop and I get to drink.
Right.
And I'm, like you said, hey, be one of the guys, man.
Well, back in my teenage years, access was an obstacle that I overcame. I had a fake ID. I went out and got a fake ID when I was 16 that said I was 23.
Oh my.
So I was like a rock star when I went to a high school party. Everybody would hit me up to buy liquor, and that gave me early access to copious amounts of liquor. Not good, especially as a teenager, and you're still developing, including your brain and all that. So I was well on my way to alcoholism long before I hit the LAPD.
So you join LAPD, you're 2 years in, you get in trouble.
Yep.
And then tell us about your career path after that, all your assignments and everything.
So I did probation at Newton, and I did really well. I completed probation at Newton. I got wheeled to West LA, of all places. And what a difference that was. Going from the south end of Los Angeles up to West LA, Brentwood, Pacific Palisades area. But I worked there. I worked patrol, and then I worked the school car. And I was up there for about 4 years, and I was peripherally involved with the O.J. Simpson case. I was working the school car at West LA, so I was up on the second floor working detectives when that murder happened. So I was involved in some of that stuff, and I remember it very well. Anyway, I left West LA, I think maybe 1995. I went down to Harbor Division, all the way down in the southernmost division of LAPD. I was working patrol there, and one of the narco detectives came out and asked if I wanted to do a loan to narcotics. And I said, absolutely. So I went on loan to narcotics. And then about a year or so later, I got a permanent position. It was called FES, Field Enforcement Section, and out of narcotics division. So that was a great job. I absolutely loved it. It's probably my best years on the LAPD. I did that from 95 all the way up into 2000. And I made Detective 1 January 2000, was it 2001, I think? Yeah, 2001. And of all places, they sent me to Harbor Division. So I went from a back trailer in the back parking lot of Harbor working narcotics to inside wearing a suit working detectives at Harbor. So I didn't have to go very far, but it was a great opportunity. I jumped right into the robbery table at Harbor. Since I knew all the detectives, because I was down there for the last 5 years working narcotics, I knew everybody inside the station. I got scooped up to work robbery right away. Great assignment. I loved it. Learned a lot. I moved on. I worked auto theft down there in the harbor. I forget what else I worked, but I got wheeled out about 2 years after that to Southeast Division. And that was, when was that, Southeast? I think it was 2003. I landed at Southeast, and I worked burglary there. I worked major assault crimes. I worked the filing team for a little while. Then I got a stint in the homicide unit at Southeast. So I worked there for about, I don't know, 17, 18 months. Homicide in the Watts area. And Ken, you know that area. It's pretty busy, real busy. Great experience, the pinnacle of my detective career, I'd have to say. And then I went on loan to Internal Affairs for a couple of DPs. And then I went back down to the harbor. Went down there for about a year working detectives. And then a friend of mine was a D3. He was in charge of a surveillance unit, major narcotics in downtown. He told me to come downtown and apply for a job there, so I did. And I ended up in downtown, a major narcotics surveillance unit. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I made D2, Detective 2, which is supervisor detective, back in West LA, of all places, working narcotics again. So I lasted there about 3 years working detectives, narcotics as a D2. And then finally, my last assignment from West LA Narcotics as a D2 was into the addiction prevention unit and behavioral science services. So I got asked to work that job. I got a phone call from the sergeant that was working there, a great guy. This guy, Dan, he asked me, hey, I could really use you here. You got a lot to offer. You've been helping guys over the years, and your name's got out there as somebody who's been sober for a long time, and you got a good message. So I thought about it for a while, Ken and Donovan. I was like, do I really want to be the poster child for alcoholic for LAPD? Do I really want to out myself and go around the city and talk about, alcoholism? And I just figured, you know what? I do have a lot to offer, and I can help people on a global scale in terms of the LAPD. And I wanted to pay it forward. Some people did some really good things for me back in the day. Like I said, I got sober May 5th, 2001. And so now when I got into the addiction prevention unit, we're looking at 2011. So I figured I'm going to pay it forward. I'm going to work this job and see what happens. So I went over there in 2011, and I ended up spending the rest of my career there, 9 years. And I retired out of there in January of 2021. So that put me at 9 years in the addiction prevention unit for LAPD, which is housed under the Behavioral Science Services section. And that's where all the police psychologists work. And I worked for the chief police psychologist of the LAPD for the last 9 years of my career. And during that assignment, my boss sent me to La Jolla Marymount School, and I got a certificate in drug and alcohol counseling from La Jolla Marymount through their extension program. And that was to professionalize my background and education as it relates to counseling employees with drug and alcohol issues, coupled with my own personal experience. So I did that. It was about a 17-month program. I went to, I think, 9 classes, and I completed the program, and I took the state board and became a state certified drug and alcohol counselor. So here I am sitting in BSS, as we call it, Behavioral Science Services, recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for quite a while, and now I have a drug and alcohol certificate behind me. And I'm going around the entire department. I'm doing roll calls. I'm doing training days. I'm doing all kinds of different events, and I'm wearing my uniform, and I'm outing myself, and just what Jack DeCoupe Crank did back in 1980. So I was doing that and helping coppers and our civilian employees as well. We had about, I think back then it was like 2,800 civilian employees that were able to come and have services through APU, as we call it, Addiction Prevention Unit.
I want to get into BSS a little later in your journey there and what you did there, but before that, I want to touch on a few articles that I ran across, because this is what I say. This came up enough for me to say this is something that's got to be addressed. But this is specific to LAPD, but like I say, it's across the nation. So in July 2025. LAPD officer gets 15 years to life for a fatal drunk driving accident in Whittier, California. He was only 35 years old, and I believe he killed 3 people in a car crash. Drunk LAPD officer in June 2025. This is all 2025. LAPD sergeant charged with killing teen in a DUI hit and run. In January 10th, 2025, rookie LAPD officer kills bicyclist in DUI crash in Ontario. One of the articles I want to bring up here is, which I found this article incredibly interesting in December 2022. After arrest of 7 cops, LAPD reminds its own officers not to drink and drive. Mike, we have a problem.
Yeah, I think so. Sound the alarm. There's a alcohol issue within law enforcement, specifically LAPD. Yep. Ken, the case you were talking about where the officer killed 3 people, I was working BSS then, and I remember that incident very well. Horrible, just a tragedy. And I think it took this long for to go through the courts and finally get charged and convicted.
Now, what? So, Mike, the question for me is when a police department now of about 8,700 police officers has to go public and it gets in the news saying, hey, guys, we've had 7 officers arrested recently for DUI. You guys, we need to remind you not to drink and drive. These are the same people that stop people who drink and drive and arrest them. And now it's got to be kind of one of those things where but this has to have been going on for a long time, Mike.
Sure.
What's happening with this, with apartments?
I think, well, I left in January of 2021. And when I left, our union was trying to figure out ways to help our membership in terms of the alcohol, off-duty alcohol issue. And they did a little reimbursement program that if you're out drinking anywhere and you end up taking an Uber, $100, whatever, they would reimburse you. Our union would reimburse you up to maybe $100 once a year. You just submit a form. So even our union was getting involved to some extent to try to curb the off-duty incidents of alcohol consumption or abusing alcohol. It's out of control, and I think the climate of what's going on in law enforcement across the country and globally, if you will, we don't have the backing of the politicians like we used to, and it seems like the citizens are not all on board with law enforcement like they were. Defund the police, all these different movements. The political climate's changed, so it adds a level of stress to law enforcement people that it's hard to understand unless you're on the job and you're trying to deal with that. And then you go home and you're dealing with your domestic issues. Maybe you got problems at home, and then you're dealing with the department administratively. It's tough. The pressure, I think, is really notched up over the years. What do you think, Donovan?
I'm going on. I mean, sometimes we're our own worst enemies. And I mean, I know even when I was early in my career, I heard of officers, oh, so-and-so, I stopped him for drunk driving. I gave him a ride home. And we didn't have that seriousness with it and allowed officers to get away with it. And I mean, I think we're doing better now because there is, how do you get away with it now with a body camera? It's,
Right.
You can't get away with that stuff. But I think even before body cameras, we were getting better at, holding our officers accountable. But I think we developed that kind of culture in some ways ourselves just by, oh yeah, we'll just give them a ride home, which just compounded the problem. Well, there's not going to be a consequence. I'll just do it again. So
I think there's a level. I felt this way early on in my career that when I'm out off duty drinking, that I had a badge in my pocket or an ID that said I was on the department, and if I was unlikely to get pulled over after I've been drinking, I probably would have a shot of getting off or getting a ride home or not getting booked because I was on the job, so to speak. But I think that's changed, and it had to change. It's at a level that it's just working in that unit that I worked for 9 years. I saw so many tragic things happen. Very, very eye-opening for me over the years.
Donovan, in Washington State, do you know if there's how Washington State addresses it, or is it a thing?
There's no specific way that they address it. It falls under the wellness programs that they're doing now, in order to provide that support for it. I mean, they don't have their own special units or anything like that. So they just lump it in with everything else. And it's still a problem. I mean, we know that back in March, there was that state trooper who ended up killing a family. And that's still dragging on because there's, some talk about maybe there was some preferential treatment done there as well. So we'll see how that case pans out.
So I taught alcohol awareness in the workplace, and I went around from recruit classes in the academy, and I did an hour presentation with a PowerPoint, and I get up in the room and I self-disclose and I talk about it. And I found lately, the last few years that I was on the job, that the standards have lowered to some extent. And Ken, you could chime in on this. They allowed an employee who had a DUI when he was in the military join the LAPD. He was sitting in a recruit class, and I forget how I came about him, but we had a brief discussion. And he said, "Yeah, I had a DUI when I was in the military a few years back, and I disclosed it to my background investigator, but it was okay." I knew that when I came on, that was a no-no. There's no way you're getting on a police department with a DUI, a misdemeanor DUI.
Yeah, I mean, for decades, the policy has been DUIs were handled the same as a misdemeanor. So they didn't differentiate between shoplifting as a kid or a DUI. They're all a misdemeanor. So if you had 3 years distance from conviction or the end of probation, King's X, you could be a police officer. Wow. And that's a written policy for LAPD candidates. And so, but yeah, with regard to standards, when you're talking about that, overlooking things and things like that, yeah, that's I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked.
Yeah. I was. I didn't know that was allowed to enter the police department, so it was news to me.
Yeah, but as a background investigator, we wouldn't just say, "Oh, you know what? Hey, you did your 3 years, and yeah, come on in." It wasn't like that, because what I would ask candidates, and I'm sure Donovan, you did the same thing. "Oh, you got a DUI. Now, moving forward, have you ever gone out since then, since your arrest? Have you ever gone out and drank even one drink for dinner and then went driving?" And if they would tell us, "Yeah, well, I only drink one drink, and every once in a while I go watch football at the pizza place and have a beer and stuff," you haven't learned your lesson. You're not supposed to drink when you're going out and get behind the wheel, period. And we would DQ people because obviously the arrest did not help them. Right. Is it the same for you, Donovan?
It is. And I would actually delve into the report as well and look at, how they acted towards the officer, and delve into that area as well. I mean, whether it's 3 years or not, do you want an angry drunk working for your police department, because we know that habit is going to come back again. So I would always highlight, their actions during that arrest from the report as well, so that the command staff can make a very good decision before they pulled the trigger on it. And you always hope that, when they go for their psych, that something's going to be caught on that. Hopefully the psychs are going to ask about that. I know back in Wisconsin, I don't think he's not practicing anymore. I don't know if he's still alive, but we had a guy who did a lot of psychs in my area for a lot of departments. And if there was any indication of a binge drinking, even in college or whatever, he would put them at a high risk so that they wouldn't get a job, because he understood the troubles with that, which I thought, a little forward thinking back then, because that was late 90s, early 2000s that, this was going on. So a lot of people hated him, but I gave him a lot of credit for that.
Yeah. And I think that this is a very big topic, but Mike, you've got people that join the police department and they go, "You want to be one of the guys? You got to come with us and drink." You have people like you that came on that had a drinking problem before you came on. You have people that go to parties and they drink excessively. You've got PTSD issues that people go, "I'm going to self-medicate. I can't do this. This is stuff that's bothering me," and things like that. What is there one or more common denominator with police officers drinking and getting in trouble?
I think it's the fact that a lot of these police officers think that, well, if I get pulled over, I'll get out of it because I'm on the job. I think in the back of their mind, at least it was with me, I got a better shot than the average citizen of getting by if I get pulled over. Um, and I just think it's police and fire, the fire service, the culture is it's just embedded. You know, the old term choir practice.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah.
It's just part of it. And boy, did I personally, I fit in like a glove. I said, this is great. You know, I can drink with the best of them. I love my job, and there's no issues here. But yeah, the common denominator is I think that, you know what, I'm on the job. I'll probably get off. It's just too. And I think now the younger generation, I don't think they understand the seriousness of what it will do to impact their career if they get in trouble early on, like especially like I did. You know, it greatly impacted my career, my whole entire career. The trouble I got into, and they don't understand that. You know, that it's not a job, it's a career, and you got 20, 25, 30 years, and you know, as you understand, you guys understand, you get a complaint in your personnel file, that goes with you all 30 years, and they always want to talk about it. So what happened here in 1992? Tell us about it. Ay, ay, ay. I don't know how many times I was asked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and when you talk about the culture, it's one thing, you know, that talk about, you know, just after shift and everything. But then when you talk about when officers go off to training and they're with other officers from other departments and they're getting together. For me, the biggest eye opener was I was a DARE officer. And when I went to a conference and all of a sudden they had the social room and it was just a free for all drunk fest. And I'm like, wait, we're here for DARE, aren't we? I mean, what are we not supposed to be setting an example here? I mean, I was probably the sober one out of the whole group, but I mean, it doesn't matter what we get involved in. Alcohol seems to always follow our profession around.
You guys remember the Baker to Vegas the parties back in the day, and just it was like tailhook back then. I mean, craziness, out of control, and it just everybody it seemed like was partying and unbelievable. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and the Chiefs go to Baker to Vegas. Donovan, you familiar with that?
I've heard stories. It's kind of iconic.
Yeah.
And you know, Mike, one of the eye openers for me was as a young copper. I remember working patrol one night with an officer. I'd never worked with him before, and I don't even know how they got in the conversation. But it turns out he's working patrol with me. But prior to that, he had been popped for drunk driving as a police officer, and he told me that they even took blood from him because he didn't blow in the is it the BAC?
BAC, yeah.
The BAC, and he got arrested. He got convicted, and then LAPD put him on a contract. And maybe you can explain that. And then later, he's in a patrol car with me, and that just blew me away. This was in the 1980s. What? And I know LAPD's. Maybe I'm phrasing this wrong. They can be very forgiving if you're an alcoholic, but you may not be able to keep your job, but they'll get you treated, right?
Absolutely. I worked with a few people over the years that end up getting terminated, and I knew they were going to get terminated, but they needed help. And I was going to do everything I could, regardless of LAPD, to help them. In terms of the contracts, when I left in 2021, the end of 2020, they were getting away from the contracts. They were few and far between. And what that was, or is usually when they go to a trial board, their attorney will negotiate with the board, possibly getting their accused employee onto a contract. First-time DUI, maybe there's extenuating circumstances. Maybe the individual had an accident. Nobody was hurt. So we're talking misdemeanor stuff. They take all the factors involved: his personnel file, his work ethic. You take testimony from supervisors. You look at ratings, and they'll possibly draw up a contract. And what that contract will state that the employee agrees not to consume alcohol for the remainder of their tenure with the LAPD on off duty anywhere, regardless. Also, the LAPD can show up, I think it was up to maybe 4 or 5 times a month, unannounced at your place of residence, knock on your door, make you do a breathalyzer. Yeah, they hold you accountable.
It's like being on
And
parole.
Right.
oh yeah, the alcohol police showing up at your door at 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Don't laugh. I've seen guys get popped doing that. I worked with a young individual that was a full-blown alcoholic, and he rolled the dice, and he was drinking at home, and guess what? Sergeant called him from down the street. Hey, I'm down at the gas station down the street. I'm coming to your house in 10 minutes. You need to blow in the breathalyzer. And sure enough, he'd been drinking that afternoon, and he blew, and he registered alcohol in his breath, and he was subsequently terminated. He was on a contract. So if you have somebody with a real drinking problem, you'll hold people accountable. You'll find out, especially if they have a long career remaining. I've had experiences where I knew coppers that refused to take a contract. They were going to offer a contract, and they just refused. They were adamant, like, no, the police department's not going to tell me I can't drink. I'm a man. I'm an adult. I'm going to drink, and you know what? I'll retire in lieu of. I'm not going to take a contract. They had enough time to retire, but I mean, crazy stuff, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Donovan, have you heard of those contracts before? Is there something new to you?
No, I've never heard of the contracts. I just know of, officers who got arrested for DUI and they didn't have a valid driver's license. They just had the little work permit, and the department would say, all right, you have to make sure that you're within your hours, you're able to drive your car from your house over to the local mall because you're going to be doing foot patrol at the local mall until you get a valid license back. And that was always that's the biggest punishment I ever saw, when someone just got popped for a DUI. I have rarely in my career seen someone lose their job just a standard DUI, unless it was a second or third offense. And I've never heard of any contracts. I haven't heard of any of the departments I worked for trying to get anyone any help either.
Interesting.
That's I remember I talked to one officer who lost his job because he had a cocaine addiction from an on-duty drug seizure, and he told me that LAPD will fire you, but they'll get you help.
Yep.
And that's the most important thing, which is surprising to me. Yeah.
I know that our unit, our addiction prevention unit, is one of the few in-house substance abuse units in police departments where they had 2 full-time supervisors in recovery for alcoholism working that unit full-time. I think the sheriff's department, which is a lot bigger than LAPD, has 1 individual. I knew him at that time when I was on the job. Nice individual. He was not in recovery, but he did a good job either way. So, I thought that LAPD took it serious, and they did the best they could with the resources that we had at the time. And as far as I know, they're still doing a good job, but it's out of control. You're talking LAPD is what, 9,000 sworn and maybe 2,800 civilian employees. And right now, my predecessor is 1 person. It's not even 2 people anymore. I guess they're trying to hire another individual, but there's 1 sworn employee for the LAPD right now working my old job at the addiction prevention unit for 9,000 employees and 2,800 civilian employees.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And you got to understand one of the tasks that I was had to do was anybody that got an off-duty DUI, whether it was sworn or civilian employee, had to go through BSS. They had to meet with the psychologist, and then the psychologist would direct them down the end of the hall, meet with the APU counselor, me or my partner at the time. So I talked with everybody that got in trouble off duty for DUI. And I remember I kept statistics too for all these years, every month. One month we had, I think, 33, 34 DUIs in 1 month, off duty DUIs. That was just 1 month. So, yeah, it's out of control. And it puts a black eye on the LAPD. You know, people are wondering what's going on. Why can't these officers maintain their composure off duty? You know, they're supposed to be. They're held to a higher standard on or off duty. You know this, you guys. And these guys are getting in trouble, and it's making the department look bad. You know,
Yeah.
especially when they have tragedies when people get killed.
So, Mike, you said you and your partner, you were both in recovery, doing the job, and then Sheriff's Department, they have one now who isn't in recovery. What, you know, not an alcoholic or well, however you say it. But do you think it's important that you have someone who is in recovery, being that contact for those officers who are going through that? Do you think it holds more clout coming from someone in your position rather than someone who's never experienced it?
I do. So I left in January of 2021. I'm not sure if that individual for the LA County Sheriffs is still working that unit. He may have retired. I don't know, but I think it's huge that myself being in recovery, and I'll tell you why. Because when I counseled somebody, and most of the people that came through my office that I counseled with the door closed, most of the people made bad decisions. Okay, or they were binge drinking and they made a bad decision and something happened. A small percentage will have a drinking problem or alcoholism like myself. But what is amazing that I found is when I get them one-on-one and I self-disclose and I tell them a little bit about my history, I get immediate buy-in because I'm sworn. I've been on the job so many years. I know a lot of people on the LAPD. They just met with a police psychologist, and there's a little level of distrust with the psychologist at BSS because they're civilians. They come down the hall and they're talking to me, and I'm talking the cop talk and all that, and I'm talking about my personal story, and I get buy-in right away. They feel comfortable. They want to talk to me. You know, whether or not they need help or not, that's a different issue. But I immediately get buy-in because I'm in recovery and I'm a sworn member of the department.
Were you ever surprised at at how big the problem was when you got help and you started getting into helping people? Was there ever a shock factor? You go, this is bigger than even I thought.
Oh, absolutely. I helped a handful of people over the years prior to going into the APU unit. And I remember when I first got into that unit and I was looking at the statistics and the people coming through our office, I was like shocked. I had no idea that the alcohol problem was so prevalent in the LAPD. Just shook my head going, wow. And I just count my blessings. I was able to, I went through the APU unit myself back in 2001, and I went through rehab. Thank God the LAPD has such great resources. I went through 30 days of treatment at Betty Ford, and the LAPD resources paid for it, and it saved my life, and I haven't had a drink since, and I'm able to pay it forward to a lot of these individuals, and I'm able to get through to them. I tell them, hey, I did the work, but the benefit of doing the work and not drinking, especially while you're on the LAPD, is huge because we're all trying to get that pension at the end of our careers and take care of our families and our kids, put our kids through college. You got a drinking problem, it's going to catch up with you at some point, and especially in a 30-year career.
Yeah. And so from 1990 to 2001, 11 years before you got sober, were there any hiccups between those years where you kind of skated a little bit? You thought, oh man, I'm going to get fired or something like that?
Absolutely. Like I said, I got in trouble in 1992, serious trouble based upon my drinking off duty. I was scared when I got back on the job after my suspension, and I didn't drink for a while. But I specifically remember 1 year from that time, I was back to where I was and then some. And it gradually got worse. And my problem was I like to drink and drive. You know, I was a happy drunk. I was a guy that would show up at your house at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, knocking on your door with a case of beer. Hey, bro, what are you doing? You know, like that was me. I drove the car constantly when I was drinking. And I just knew at some point in time, especially closer to 2001, I knew at some point something horrific was going to happen to me. I could feel it. And I started to notice that the symptoms of alcoholism were raising their ugly head in my life. The wheels are coming off the bus, so to speak. I drank differently than other people, I noticed. I was a blackout drinker. And as time went on, the blackouts were more frequent and longer in duration. I would go through the worst, unbelievable hangovers that I can't even put words to. And what I learned later on after I got sober was I was going through DTs. You know, I was going through the DTs. I wasn't hungover. I was going through DTs. You know, it was bad. You know, I'll give you an example. I go out party on Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. I mean, party hard. And then Sunday, I wouldn't drink. I'd sit home, watch football because I knew Monday morning I had to get up and go to work. I couldn't sleep Sunday night. I'd be up staring at the ceiling all night long. Could not sleep, and I couldn't figure it out for years. That's the way it was. That's DTs. That's alcohol withdrawal. And my body was going through withdrawals, and that was one of the side effects of withdrawals. It was I couldn't sleep, you know, and sometimes I wouldn't feel normal until like Tuesday or Wednesday.
Wow.
And then the cycle would start again on Thursday or Friday. And this went on for years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's get into a little bit of BSS LEPD Behavioral Science Services and your work there. So, what exactly do they provide? What services do they provide, and how do people end up being referred there?
Well, since the alcohol thing is such a huge topic, I think everybody on the job knows that if you get sent to BSS and you're getting an alcohol-related complaint, first of all, you're going to see the psychologist. That's a given, and you have to do what the psychologist tells you to do. And he or she is going to refer you down the hall to the APU unit, myself and my partner. And you don't have to do anything. You can sit there in my office with your arms crossed and listen and not respond, and then walk out after I talk to you and do an assessment. I think it's really effective. There's an insurance program. It's through the Holman Group, and they provide inpatient services to some employees that need it or want that, and it's huge. You know, you get in trouble in the LAPD. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm going to fall on the sword. I'm going to say I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to go to treatment." And then I'm going to roll the dice at a trial board, or hopefully the complaint is mitigated in my favor because I threw myself on the sword, right? Well, I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to tell somebody, no, you can't go to treatment because you're just doing it to try to save your job. I'm going to send you to treatment. And I've done that in the past, and people have found, you know what? After I was in treatment, I realized, you know what? I really do have a problem. And it's helped a lot of people that way. So our services are far-reaching. I had a take-home car, Ken and Donovan. I'd go to Riverside. I'd go down to San Diego, wherever I needed to go to meet with an employee that was struggling, that wanted to meet. A lot of people didn't want to come into BSS on LAPD property or buildings. They want to meet at a Starbucks in Riverside or whatever, and talk, and that's what we do. You know, try to ease them into this thing, and you know, get them the help they need. A lot of times the first meeting doesn't do anything. You know, I plant the seed, And then maybe a month or 2, 3 months, or even 6 months, I'll get a phone call. Hey, Mike, I don't know if you remember, we met for coffee about 6 months ago in Hermosa Beach. And yeah, I kind of remember. Hey, I was wondering, can I come down to your office? I need to talk to you. Sure, absolutely. And because I planted that seed way back when, I went out of my way. I went to meet this individual. Now they realize 6 months has gone by. They need help, and they're ready to do it. And so I gavel them up, and I make the calls, and I do all the logistics, and I deal with the department wherever they're working. I call their commanding officer, and they know what I do and what I provide, and I say, hey, I'm working with the officer's permission, obviously. I'm working with your employee. He's going to be out of pocket for 30 days. You can contact me, and I'll let you know when the employee is going to be suitable to come back to work, and this and that. So we do this. We manage employees with substance abuse issues. It's also not just. Let me just say one last thing. It's also not just substance abuse. I had a handful of people that were dealing with what they called process addiction. Somebody has a gambling problem. That's a problem. Gambling usually goes hand in hand with alcohol. Also, sex addiction. I've dealt with a few people that had a sex addiction. I'm not capable to counsel somebody on that, but I know where I could send them and get them the help, and that's part of our job in the APU unit. Find these people the help they need. I mean, where are they going to go, Ken? I mean, you know the LAPD. You're going to go to your watch command and say, I have a sex addiction? What? They're going to go, are you crazy? You know, it doesn't work like that. But you come down to my office, I'll take it seriously. I'll find where to send you. I don't care if it's out of state. You're going to get the help you need, and save your job and your family, whatever.
Yeah, you know, and you talk about LAPD having the BSS, which is great for a big department. But when you talk about smaller departments around the country, have you had any interactions with any of the other groups that are out there that help the emergency services personnel like Deer Hollow and all those? I mean, are those quality programs out there as well?
I don't know, Donovan, the program you're talking about, but I remember years ago when I was working, I came out to Vegas. No, I didn't come out here to Las Vegas. I had a couple of Las Vegas guys that were working the wellness unit. I think it was they had lunch with us one day, and we just swapped information and stories. So I think there was a couple of guys working the wellness unit, trying to model what we were doing in LA to help coppers in Las Vegas Metro with issues.
Right.
So, but as other agencies, I never heard from any other agencies really. Maybe once in a while I get a phone call to get some information, but I mean, you're talking thousands, especially in California, thousands of small agencies, and they don't have the resources that the LAPD does, or LA County Sheriff's.
Right.
And Mike, is alcoholism an ADA issue?
Yes, absolutely. If somebody goes to treatment, they're protected by ADA, and they self-disclose as an alcoholic. You can't fire somebody for that. If they get into an incident and they break the law, then they can be terminated for breaking the law, but not for having a disease, which alcoholism is considered a disease. They call it substance use disorder now. It's not called alcoholism. I think substance use disorder is the current term that they're using.
Yeah, and Donovan, same thing for police applicants who have gone to treatment. If you get in trouble for an alcohol-related incident, that's in the backgrounds. But if you went to treatment, you're covered by ADA, and the background doesn't cover that at all.
Right. Right.
So, and Mike, am I getting this correct? Where I feel like there's two sections that we're talking about. One is the police officers that get into the culture and they just drink and then they get in trouble. And then there's the alcoholic aspect of it. Are those two separate issues? and the dangers of drinking drinking as a police officer, as a lifestyle, or being an alcoholic? Are those two separate issues?
I think they're combined to a certain extent. Somebody could join the LAPD, and I knew people that joined the LAPD and hadn't drank alcohol prior to becoming a cop. And then they get on the LAPD and they start drinking, and with a short amount of time, all of a sudden they're a problem drinker. But if you're going to go out and abuse alcohol time and time again, you're increasing the chances of crossing over that imaginary line into alcoholism. And that was my job as well, is to identify what that is, what that looks like, and do an assessment on these employees. The good news is a lot of employees that felt that they were going off the rails, so to speak, or even got in trouble, weren't necessarily an alcoholic like myself. They could reel it back in. If they changed their behavior, they could ride the ship better. It's a fine line, but the culture is such. It seemed when I was a young copper, more people than not, especially at after parties, after work, or on the weekends, use alcohol than not. I knew very little people that didn't at least drink one drink at a party or an event or at a restaurant, at a get-together, a promotion party, a retirement. So
I know two of my police applicants. Both of them got fired from police departments because they went partying after graduation. Yeah. They spent all that time applying, going through the whole academy, and then end up getting fired because they drove DUI after graduation.
Yeah, they never made it to their first division.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
And Mike, what should police applicants know about the dangers of alcohol use as a self-medicating mechanism?
Sure. Alcohol, especially in the police culture and fire culture as well, it's used as a coping mechanism for stress, for enjoyment. Also in different cultures. A lot of different cultures use alcohol in religious events and celebrations and things like that. My advice to somebody that's applying to LAPD or any police agency is, while you're going through the process, don't drink. Don't drink. And while you're going through the police academy, don't drink. Because if you have a hiccup, all that work that you talked about, it goes out the door. And it's not that big a deal to put it down for the 6 months or whatever. Give it up for 6 months. You eliminate the possibility of having that alcohol-related complaint prior to graduating the police academy. Boy, I wish, I got lucky going through, because I drank on the weekends. I drank at our graduation. I got drunk on our graduation. I just got lucky, and then it reared its ugly head in my life early on. But I would tell the applicant, hey, you know what? If you're serious about this as a career, give it up until you're at least through the academy and at least through probation. If you're going to drink on probation, make sure you're home. Do not get in a car ever after you've had one drink, especially while you're on probation.
Yeah, those are wise words. You covered my last question to wrap it up. Mike's words of wisdom, and I think you covered it. I cannot emphasize enough seeing what all three of us have seen over decades of police officers getting in trouble, police officers getting killed. There was numerous stories of police officers dying in drunk driving accidents, single car accidents. And I think it's important that before the people listening to this podcast, you are going to apply to be a police officer. Please, please heed these words that Mike is talking about. Just stay away from alcohol, period. I
agree.
It does no good. It does no good. And there's even LAPD put out a special order or something within the last few months telling officers you can't carry your gun if you're drinking.
Really?
Yeah, I think that has to do with going to bars. Cops go to bars. They're carrying their off-duty weapons or whatever in bars, and there's been shootings before. And you don't want to be caught with alcohol in your system and you get in a shooting.
Right.
No.
So, Donovan, you have anything in closing?
No, it's a great episode. It's a great topic. It's one that needs to be talked about more.
Yeah. Mike, we really appreciate you coming on here. This is probably one of our most important topics that we've ever had. And I think that this is a precursor to the classes, hopefully in the academies, that people think enough about the issue, the problem that they teach in the academies.
It's the big white elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. It's very difficult. And it needs to be talked about, especially in 2025 and moving forward. Yeah,
and I think that the problem's a lot worse when police departments have to come out and go, hey, we have a problem. Way past due. Mm-hmm. Way past due. So, guys, thanks for being here. Mike, we appreciate you. And we will be back in a couple of weeks.
For more information on scheduling your police background consultation, go to policebackground.net. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes.